to Safely Divergent. We're your hosts. I'm Eleanor.
And I am Kirstie.
Hit us. What are we talking about today, Kirs?
I am in a stress cycle. So we thought, why not dig in to what that is, how I got here, and how we're dealing with it.
Right. I mean, honestly, our goal at the podcast is to bring you into our real conversations. And this has been the conversation for the last couple weeks. So it felt like, a right time to just say like, hey, let's unpack this. Let's talk about it.
It's complex. It's not a straightforward thing. So if we can name the things and understand what's happening, it makes dealing with it a lot easier. So this isn't the worst stress cycle I've ever been in because I have tools that I didn't have in the past. So let's just learn what a stress cycle is.
Bring it on. Okay, let's actually start with where the word stress comes from, because we usually think of stress as a feeling. Like I'm so stressed. This is a stressful week. But that's not where the term originated. And honestly, if we could go back to the original meaning, it might actually be a more helpful way to understand what's going on in our bodies.
I loved hearing this terminology of where stress originated from because it makes so much more sense to me now. So stress is a physics term. It came from the field of engineering. So it's used to describe how much tension on a material like steel or concrete can handle before it bent or broke. So it wasn't about feeling anxious or feeling overwhelmed. It was about the load, the strain, like the thresholds that these materials could withstand. And that's actually a much better way to think about stress in our bodies, because our systems are constantly managing load. When the load becomes too much, when our bodies start kicking into gear to protect ourselves, when we're adapting to the things in our environment, and if we're overcompensating for the excess of information coming in.
Okay, so let's talk about what this actually looks like in our bodies and what's going on all day, every day.
Okay, so we have all these systems in the body. So temperature regulation, heart rate, blood pressure, oxygen levels, monitoring of your sugar levels, even things like attention span and emotional regulation. And every single one of these has its own sweet spot, like a range it needs to stay within to keep you functioning well. So when something pushes one of those systems out of this ideal range, otherwise known as homeostasis, your body kicks into gear to fix it, to move it back into its optimal range, like a thermostat. So for example, if you are too cold, what response do you tend to have?
You shiver.
Okay, what if you're too hot? What response do you tend to have?
Your body sweats to cool you down.
Okay, what happens to your heart when I make you do front squats and it's a little too heavy?
Well, I'm going to roll my eyes, and then my heart is going to start speeding up and beating out of my chest.
Okay, what happens to me when I haven't eaten in a while and my blood sugar gets too low?
Well, first of all, you're going to be hangry. You're going to be tired and distracted, maybe lightheaded, maybe spacey, maybe having a hard time focus.
Okay, well, let's just keep at me then. What happens when I get a little snippy with you and you don't like my tone?
Typically, I just go into free state and kind of shut down.
Okay, so you have a limbic system response for your body to kick into gear and protect yourself, right?
Correct.
Okay, so none of this is just emotional. I am air quoting. It doesn't start and stop in your brain. Stress is physiological, meaning it impacts your whole body. These systems don't work in isolation. They're constantly communicating, adjusting, and working together to keep you in balance.
Right, but when these stressors start stacking up and there's not enough recovery time between them, those systems can't keep up. And that's when we get pushed into what is called a stress cycle. So now our bodies aren't just reacting, they're overcompensating. So it's burning through our energy reserves just to give ourselves a sense of order again.
And for me, that is exactly where I find myself today and the last couple of weeks.
You lucky girl. We thought it might be helpful to walk through what that pile up actually looked like, because in the past, this sort of pile up could have easily spiraled into something way bigger and turned into maybe like a full season of depression.
I feel like you're being very kind about that because I think this is
I'm trying to be gentle. This is a current event.
You're right. But with like the more awareness and the more regulation tools I've added to my belt, I've been able to keep it from turning into a full-blown tornado that it would have in the past. And I can still feel it, but I'm not getting swept up into it.
Right. And many stress cycles start in what we talk about, the biological domain and the emotion domains. And the tricky part is they don't just stay in their lanes. They link up with other domains, other stressors, and multiply each other.
Do they ever? In this case, my stress cycle started with an overload in the emotion domain. One of my favorite people is going through a really hard time, and naturally that's weighing on me. So I'm carrying a mix of complex emotions. I'm feeling joy for the new season ahead of her. I'm feeling grief for what she has to leave behind. I'm worrying for her safety. I often feel helplessness when I don't feel like I'm doing enough to support her. It's all there, and honestly, probably even more that I can't fully name in this moment and will continue to pick up as I, put some of these in the rear view and have time to sit in them. And when this emotional load builds up, anxiety tends to follow. My brain gets so loud, my thoughts are racing, and any ability for me to tune into my body and listen to these internal cues, which are already really hard for me, that's out the window right now. I'm moving through things without really processing what's going on, so my ability to stay present in the moment, not my strong suit right now.
You've been in survival mode, and these other things that can be really difficult for you have kind of been going out the window.
Which brings us right into the connection with the biological domain. Because when my mind's spinning like that, it starts messing with the biological basics. Suddenly, it's harder for me to fall asleep. It's tough for me to stay asleep. I'm waking up at that 3 o'clock cortisol rush hour. So then I'm waking up in the morning tired. I don't want to exercise because I feel too tired. And all I want to eat is butter toast and dino nuggies.
Yeah, it's been a pretty limited diet around here the last couple weeks.
Shockingly, with all of that, I got sick. I had pretty intense congestion, coughing, and just generally running low on every level. And even though I can't see it happening, my body is actively working to fight off this infection. It's redirecting and prioritizing my energy to heal and recover. So I'm not just feeling drained, I am drained because my system is working overtime behind the scenes.
But the tricky thing is life goes on. The world doesn't just pause because you're in a stress cycle. You're still working, you still have to manage responsibilities, you still have to live day-to-day life, even in this stress cycle.
Which is really difficult because just like the basic cognitive tasks feel so hard when this biological and emotion domain link up and start multiplying each other. Things like making decisions, asking a simple question, figuring out what to wear, really remembering why I came into a room. That's becoming a lot harder. And then just motivating myself to do the basic hygiene tasks. These all really start to feel like an uphill battle. And like you said, I still have to work. So tasks that normally take me a day, they're stretching out over an entire week. My focus is so scattered. My processing speed is feeling very slow, and I'm just second guessing things I do without blinking in a regulated state.
Right. And as these things pile up, so we're talking about the emotion domain, the biological and cognitive, what happens is it naturally starts spilling into the social and prosocial domains as well.
Oh, yeah. I have zero desire to engage with people right now. I went for a walk this morning, and I typically kind of have this rule of once you get a handful of steps from someone, you look up, you make eye contact, and then I give a nod. And I walked out the door and I was like, no one's getting a knot this morning. Like,
Nobody better look in my direction.
Don't look in my direction. And I honestly just want to lay in bed. I want to scroll endlessly on my phone. I want to play my new game of stacking and just not, be put on the spot to socially engage. I got onto the elevator the other day and I heard someone coming in the door and I didn't hold it for them.
What? Who are you?
I know. It gets worse. So I didn't hold it and the guy sprints to stop the door and I'm like, okay, I'm a jerk. I didn't hold the door. And then I tried to engage in a conversation of like, sometimes people don't like when you hold the door. And what did he say? Like something like, someone doesn't like if you hold the door. Can't imagine that. And I was like, yep, you're right.
Very valid. God. Turns out I just didn't want to hold the door because I didn't want to have to interact with you.
Which is so far from my norm, which I think really brings us right into that prosocial domain, is like, I am a hyper empathetic person. So naturally, when all of these stressors are weighing heavy on my system, my empathy turns off to protect myself. I'm allocating so much energy elsewhere that I don't have, it's not a choice. I'm not saying I'm not going to be empathetic today. I do not have access to it. My capacity to connect, to consider others, to show up in those social environments and offer that of myself is just offline right now.
So all of this is to say, without this awareness of these stressors and how they stack up and multiply on each other, you would 100% be adding fuel to the fire without this information and understanding.
Oh, you don't know me.
I've seen you in this cycle before, and I am so proud of how you've been handling this go.
No, you're absolutely right, and you're one of the only people that sees that. Like, one of the first things to identify that I'm in a stress cycle is how my dialogue shifts. So how I'm speaking about myself, and then it slips out here and there. So you hear things like, wow, of course I'm here. This is just who I am. Why should I even try? I'm no good. I'm the worst. You hear these things coming out, and that isn't my norm anymore. That's not how I speak to myself anymore. So when those start to come up, it's showing I'm really in a stress cycle because my internal dialogue has taken over into the dark side.
Dark and scary.
It is. And that kind of self-talk, it doesn't help. It locks you into a stress cycle. Brings us right back to how this tornado starts. It's the emotional domain. I'm feeling anxious. I'm overwhelmed. I'm stuck in a noisy brain. I'm intensifying that by telling myself all these negative things about me, which then means my sleep is more disrupted. My body can't recover. And the cycle just keeps spinning and spinning and spinning because I'm adding to that load without tools to shift me out of it.
It really is a vicious cycle. Okay, Kirstie, so the big question is, how do we get out of the stress cycle? What are you going to do?
I feel like the biggest number one step is we have to gain that awareness. We have to start to understand that we're in these spaces. And really that comes from understanding our 5 domains. And because I do, I can now catch it. I can pause and remind myself, this is just a season. And I have managed to make it out of every season before this one. And I've found my way through to the other side. So when that negative voice inside of me is telling me that it's never going to end, I can say, history tells me it will. That itself is just so helpful and holds such a weight. That reminder softens this inner spiral. It gives me space to meet myself where I am instead of where I think I should be. If I push for where I should be, I'm going to not allow myself to accept accommodations. I am going to keep pushing through and telling myself I just have to go, go, go. Whereas sitting in it and telling myself this is a season and allowing myself to accept that lets me give myself my accommodation.
I will say, I'll give you huge props because you have been so kind to yourself and so gentle with yourself and just taking it easy the last couple of weeks with this understanding and this recognition. So I'm very proud of you.
That looks like allowing myself safety in the basics. So if we look at my biological needs, right now, eating comfort food is the way to go because eating something is better than not eating at all. I'm fairly certain, I know actually, that I ate pizza for all 3 meals yesterday, breakfast, lunch, and dinner.
And that was a nice breakup from the dino nuggies 4 nights in a row before that.
But you know what? Like I said, eating something is better than not eating at all, which is typically my other route that I go. I don't get those cues and I don't eat. The other area, which reminds me of yesterday too, sleep, rest, allowing my body rest whenever I need it. Yesterday I woke up at 11 and I'm pretty sure I took a 3-hour nap. So my body's asking me to rest so it can recover, and I'm allowing that without shaming myself.
I was going to say, you're listening to your body. Your body's saying, hey, girl, you need some rest. You've been through it. Take a nap. Get the sleep. Totally. Eat the dino nuggies.
And I am eating those.
You're listening to that voice.
Yes, I am. And then movement. A lot of times I get really strict and structured on what my workouts need to look like. And now it's just, if I get down the stairs, if I can walk the 15 steps to the grocery store and I got sunlight, I'm accepting that as my win for the day. And it's okay.
Right. Like maybe we're not doing the 1 hour after work walk together, but we will walk around the block. And that's more than 0 and better than maybe what you would have done in the past.
Yeah, which I think brings us right into like the psychological pieces, like taking and celebrating the wins where I can. When I manage to get in the shower, if I go outside, showing up for the bare minimum and actually praising myself for doing it instead of just brushing it off as, well, this is just what people do and I just need to be okay with it.
And then if you think of like how you're supporting your social needs, I think a big one is not forcing social engagement. Like the guy in the elevator that you were trying to avoid the other day, you were protecting yourself with that. That's not your norm. Maybe it's also being more comfortable letting yourself say no to social engagements, like last week having to skip out on your softball league.
I knew I did not have the capacity to do that, and the other social engagement I had the next day. I was proud of me for allowing that too. It's not the norm. And I'm also, when I'm showing up in these spaces, I'm giving myself full permission not to perform or like people please. If my body feels like I need to stand up and walk away and go get some fresh air, I don't feel the need to force myself to stay and engage when that's just not working for me right now. I want to show up as best as I can. My body's asking me to do something. I'm listening to those cues. But with all that said, I'm also sitting with a reminder that safe people and safe connections can really fill my tank more than almost anything else. So I'm trying not to shut people out. I'm just being very intentional about when and how I engage and choosing moments that do feel genuinely nourishing.
Right. I mean, that's huge. And I feel like that's a really important piece of having that safe inner circle of people that do fill you up and help you out when you are in a stress cycle like this.
I noticed that as I reduce my stress load, these skills that are hard right now, they just like naturally come back online. So like not being able to do tasks and things taking much longer and not being able to answer questions, those slowly come back online. I start feeling more capable. I feel that flicker of motivation to eat well and exercise because I've built that intrinsic motivation that pull me back to it. I have the will and the want to socially engage again. I can feel others' feelings and not take them on as my own. I think we've discussed in the past the difference between empathy and compassion. And I'm not forcing it, but because I've made space for myself, I look at myself with much softer eyes. I'm adjusting my load and slowed this cycle before it spiraled into that category 5 tornado that I have met before a time or two in the past.
You are fighting against like an EF5 tornado.
Oh, absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because life takes a turn. that is just natural. Stressors are going to pile up like a big ol' hunk of dookie. And sometimes you just have to sit in that big ol' hunk of dookie a bit.
Sit in the stink.
Sit in the stank. But there is another side, and you will get there. I am speaking into a microphone, but I'm probably also just trying to give myself this pep talk.
Your affirmations.
Yes.
There is another side. You will get there. Okay. I feel like let's drop this serious talk. You want a fun fact? I feel like I've been trying to drop some fun facts on you lately to help cheer you up. Are you ready?
I love your fun facts, so please.
Let's get scattered. Okay, so I got a quick one for you today. Did you know that the high five was invented in 1977?
Really?
I know. Like, that's not a long time ago.
No.
Like, our parents were teenagers when the high five was invented.
There's just so many sports that were played prior to 1977.
Okay.
So it's surprising.
Well, let me tell you about it. So I got a lot of this information from the YouTube creator Half is Interesting, who does like deep dives into this sort of thing. And so like, yeah, handshakes have been around since prehistoric times, but the high five, relatively brand new. So 1977. And there's some debate over the origin of the high five and who was the first one. There's different claims, but here's the most accepted origin, and this is like kind of the go-to response. Guess where it happened? It's a place you love.
Taco John's.
That's a great guess. You love it just as much, I think. Dodger Stadium.
Okay. Oh, I went the wrong direction there.
Two places that you love for very different reasons. Dodger Stadium. So 1977, the Dodgers are trying to make history. So what they were trying to do this season was have 4 players with 30 home runs each. They were trying to break this record. So 1977, it's the 6th inning. Dusty Baker hits his 30th. And he's the 4th one. And so he's coming around the bases. When he gets home, his teammate Glenn Burke threw his hands in the air and Baker slapped it. Boom. First high five.
I'm mind boggled because like what other alternative? What did they chest bump? What was the other option happening before this day in 1977?
I don't know. There's even a photo. It's kind of neat. There's a photo of the very first high five. And it's funny because Baker has this quote like discussing, you know, like in hindsight, like, okay, now the high five's a very common thing now, but he was saying, quote, his hand was up in the air and he was arching his back. So I just reached up and hit his hand. It seemed like the right thing to do. Like, it's just this, like, it's so interesting. It's such a common thing now. And it's interesting to think of a time when that wasn't just commonalities. But I thought it was pretty neat because then I was saying how there's all these theories. Magic Johnson claims that he invented the high five. But, you know, who hasn't claimed to invent something fun? So there's really no basis in that. He doesn't really have any dates or can't, you know, remember when and where that happened, but he claims he was the first one to do it.
There's no photo evidence. But
no, there's no photo of him. So, you know, it's short and sweet, but did people slap hands before 1977? Sure. Like they weren't the first people to connect hands together, but the high five as we know it, like a representation of a celebration, like the semantics of it. Right. This is where it all started, 1977. So not that long ago. So we're going to play a quick little game. Older or younger than the high five?
Oh, no. You know I have no concept of time.
I know. It's going to be fun. So like if, for example, if I were to say your mom.
That is older than the high five.
Your mom is older than the high five, but not by a lot. She would have just been like, our parents would have been, like I said, early teens. Okay, so that's our warm-up round.
Okay.
The first Star Wars movie, older or younger than the high five?
Younger.
Older, but it's kind of a trick question. You know, I like to throw those in there. It premiered in May 1977, so just months before the high five. So pretty much the same. Okay, next one. The first email sent.
I'm going to go with that is older than the high five.
Correct. So the first email was in 1971. Okay, number 3. The McDonald's Happy Meal.
Ooh. Happy Meal. Younger.
Yes. The Happy Meal is younger. It was invented 2 years after the high five.
Okay. Did they have toys in them?
What were the first Happy Meal toys? I'm curious. Save that thought. It'll be a scattered someday.
Okay,
the history.
Probably not Beanie Babies, because that's the 90s.
Oh, I loved the collection of the mini Beanie Babies. All right. Next one. MTV.
I think that MTV is younger than the high five.
Correct. It premiered in 1981 with just the most awesome music video. Video killed the radio star. Okay.
Quick tidbit.
That'll save that thought. Another scattered.
Okay.
Okay, let's see. Let's do 2 more. Beyonce. Is Beyonce older or younger than the first high five?
Beyonce. Oof. Beyonce being born, right? Not Beyonce becoming an icon.
Beyonce's age. Is she older or younger than the high five?
I'm gonna go with she's younger than the high five.
She is, but only by a couple of years. Beyonce was born in September 1981.
Okay.
So a few years. The high five had been around for a couple of years before she was born.
I feel like you should just always lean younger when talking about a lady's age.
It's a safe bet. Okay, last one. Walt Disney World opening.
Oof. I'm gonna say that's older.
Yes. Walt Disney World opened in 1971. And the high five, a few years later.
I think I crushed.
I think that's the best you've ever done, to be honest.
What was in my water this morning?
It's just because you've been doing so much restorative care the last couple of weeks, taking care of your mental health. You're just like, oh, I got this.
There is a chance that I have moved out of my stress cycle while in this recording.
We're seeing that you're it couldn't be that easy. All right.
Dream.
That is all I have today. So that rounds up our episode. Man, hopefully we'll just be smooth sailing. Our live's going to be just on an upward trajectory. We're going to have no stress in our life. It's going to be beautiful.
It starts with manifestation, so I am here for it.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.
That's a wrap on today's episode. If you loved the episode, please take a moment to rate and review us on Apple Podcasts or follow and subscribe on Spotify. For a deeper dive into this week's topic, follow us on social media at Safely Divergent and check out our blog at safelydivergent.com. Our cover art is by Honor Heindel and our music by Obey Gray. As a reminder, we're just 2 people with microphones, a lot of thoughts, and some highly questionable hyperfixations. We're not your therapists, doctors, or life coaches, so please do not base major life decisions on our couch chats. Until next time, we hope your nervous system stays safe and social, and your to-do list magically does itself.